Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balabha Girivara Radhi Gopijana Balabha Girivardhani Gopijana Balabha Girivardhani Yasodhanandana Brajachanarandana Yasodhanandana Brajachanarandana Jamuna Tiravana Chadi Jamuna Tiravana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhani Gopijana Balabha Girivardhani Gopijana Balabha Girivardhani Gopijana Balabha Girivardhani Yasodhanandana Brajachanarandana Yasodhanandana Brajachanarandana Brajachanarandana Yamuna Tiravana Chadi Jamuna Tiravana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayom Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatarasatasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavarind Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaura Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. A little refresher because it's been 4 days since we've been on this topic. And this is prayers of Lord Brahma to Krishna after the Brahma Vimohan Leela. And we heard the first 30 verses, which are prayers identifying his divinity or the opulences of the Absolute. And now this next set of verses, 31 through 40, it's describing the sweetness. And we're up to text 34. But before we cover 34, let's just do a quick review. In 31, Brahma is honoring the good fortune of the cows and the mothers who for 1 month were directly feeding Krishna their milk. How greatly fortunate, the absolute truth, the source of everything that he's described in the first 30 verses is being intimately served by them. And then in verse 32, he extends that appreciation to Nanda and the cowherd men, and then to all the residents of Vrindavan, and how they are recipients of such mercy also, how fortunate they are. Aho bhagyam, aho bhagyam. And then we spent a lot of time on verse 33, which is how the demigods who are controlling the deities in the material world, demigods are controlling the senses of those who have material bodies, are receiving good fortune from those who are receiving good fortune, the residents of Vrindavan. And then comes 34. We're beginning 34 this morning. A little backtracking. There was a verse in text 32 commentary that I didn't know, and now I do know where it comes from. There's a statement from one of the Upanishads. Atha kasmat uchate brahma brimhatyati brimhayati cha. I'll read. This is from the commentary. Now this is a commentary speaking about the good fortune of the residents of Vrindavan. And in the verse 32 commentary, there is something else which is astonishing, : this bliss is eternal, the happiness of the Brijbasis. Someone may have a little amount of bliss, but that is not eternal. These cowherds had eternal bliss. Why is that? It is because he is the greatest, Brahma, or Brahman. Then comes Ata kasmat uchate Brahma brimhayati cha. And the translation is, Brahman is great and gives greatness to others. So the greatness to others is the good fortune of Brijbasis. That gives greatness to others. Because, why? Because he's great. Brimhati, confirmed, that's from the Upanishads, confirmed in the Vishnu Purana, which says, Brahman, that gives the Sanskrit, Brahman is known as the supreme entity because it is the greatest, Brihatva, having the quality of Brihat. It's the greatest. And because it is the nourisher of all things. Brimha Natva, from Vishnu Purana. So there was when I read that, I commented, it doesn't say where that is from, that Upanishad reference, and with some research, here's where it's from. And it's quoted in Bhagavat Sandarbha. Bhagavat Sandarbha is one of the 6 Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami, and in this particular section, number 4, he's describing the features of Bhagavan that surpass the features of Brahman and Paramatma. That's the topic of Brihat Bhagavatamrita, Bhagavat Sandarbha. It begins, in order to explain the qualification for the 3 aspects of one tattva, to manifest, the qualification for realizing Brahman is described. So that three aspects, you know what the three aspects are. Vedanta tat tattva vedas, tattvam yajnanam advayam, brahmeti, paramatmeti, bhagavanichi shabhyate. So in Bhagavad Sandarbha, he's describing Bhagavan. And so it starts, in order to explain the qualifications of these three aspects of one tattva, to manifest, the qualification for realizing of Brahman is described. And lo and behold, it's in chapter 14, text number 6. This Brahma's prayers. Brahma prays, "Oh, great Lord, the greatness of one among your qualities may be realized by persons with pure hearts as Brahman, according to his realization of pure Atma, by a mind having no change, having no object of realization, since the Lord is actually beyond definition." So that was presented as Jiva Goswami's way of explaining the qualification for realization of Brahman. It's a mind that doesn't change. And because the Lord is beyond material definition, there's no material object of realization within him. So when his attention is withdrawn from the temporary and fixed on Sat, he goes on. "O Lord, with unlimited qualities in your Sarup," from this verse of Brahma's prayers, "Hey Bhuman, though it is difficult to understand Brahman and Bhagavan, it is possible for persons with pure antakarana." What's antakarana? Well, karana means causation, and antakarana is causation within. So it's a term that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami use kind of commonly. It's similar, as far as I can understand, to vasana, or a general tendency. It's a subtle force that causes things, antakarana, subtle force within. So tendencies. So if there's a pure Atma, or there's pure antakarana, then he puts in parentheses, amalantara atmabihi. So the orientation of the soul that's in Shuddha Sattva state. A mind that's completely pure, not mode of goodness pure, but completely pure. So one's mind, like Vasudev state. Vasudev state. Remember that? Because we discussed that with verse 33. Vasudev state, pure chitta, pure consciousness. Vasudev state. Then Vasudeva appears there. So, what's the topic is, what's the qualification to realize Brahman or Bhagavan? It's a mind that's pure. Say it negatively. Until the mind becomes pure, we will not have the realization. We may have some acceptance in principle of Bhagavan, or the existence of a reality that's beyond the temporary. We may have that faith and pursue according to faith. But when the bell rings, when the mind is pure, or the antakarana is pure, or chitta is pure, or the Vasudev state is achieved, then comes realization. That's the point. And then one can understand the greatness, mahima, or Brahman nature, which does not manifest the qualities of your Swarup. So that's Brahman that's without qualities. That's Brahman without qualities. That's the Brahman feature. Then Jiva Goswami quotes this verse. He says the source is Shira Upanishad, which I've never heard before, but Shruti says, Ata kasmat uchate Brahma brimhayati cha. That is, Brahman is great and gives greatness to others. Now that's the Bhagavan feature. All of this is back to text 32, which is what our topic is. The good fortune of the Brijbasis comes from the one who is great and gives greatness. That's where their good fortune comes from. And their good fortune comes because they have that realization, because their mind is pure, or their antakarana is pure, or their chitta is pure, or their heart is pure. They have nothing else but Krishna's shelter. They don't have other shelters. What is the cause of realization? One can realize Brahman by realizing one's nature as pure Atma, or Tvam. That's an explanation that says, it's in many places in the Bhagavatam, you know, that the Atma has characteristics like Bhagavan, or Paramatma, or Parabrahman, the absolute truth. We have characteristics like. That's the Vaishnava explanation of one of those favorite verses from the Upanishads that the Mayavadis like. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Yes, we have qualitative oneness, or even Soham, or Aham Brahmasmi. We have qualities. So if one can understand the Atma, the Jiva Atma, it gives an indication of the qualities that are in an unlimited degree in Bhagavan, in the Supreme. So Atma connects with Parabrahman, or Paramatma. Brahman connects with Parabrahman. So a qualification to realize Parabrahman is the pure consciousness. So then in that state we can also realize Atma. Doubt. Realization is a function of the antakarana, since it is subject to changes of the gross and subtle bodies. How can it understand an object with no change? Either Atma or Brahman. Answer, this antakarana has given up all changes. Avikriyat. So I hope you follow. This is, if you want to realize Krishna, if you want to become Krishna consciousness, the mind has to be beyond changes. That's, steady. Stitadi. And there are phrases like that in Bhagavad Gita. The mind is steady. And that's possible when the mind is pure. That is to say, we can see stuff out there, diversity, and there was a snowstorm and it's cold, and we can perceive things. We're not oblivious. But the mind is steady. And how does the mind become steady? In our teachings, it's through bhakti. It's dedicating the senses to the service of the master of the senses. Then the senses become purified. The antakarana becomes purified. And then there's realization of Rishikesh by that faith in the bhakti process. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. And then the mind doesn't change. The mind doesn't change in terms of duality. Like the residents of Vrindavan, they have love for Krishna. So they have feelings. They're not stones. But that's, that's rasa, that's different than the material covering. It's an important distinction. mega important distinction for us in the practicing stage to understand what the mature stage is. Where it's not, the striving is not to become numb. Then I don't have any feelings and there's no changes because I entered this zone of nirvisheshunyavadi. That's not our teaching. Or the mind isn't moved by the material variegatedness, but it is moved by spiritual variegatedness. It's a little delicate, but it's actually a difference between night and day. Doubt. One realizes objects, but the pure Atma, or Tvam, is not the object of any realization since it is internal. How can you realize something you can't see and it's within you? The reply, this realization is devoid of having an object of realization, arupataha. Since the realization is devoid of an object, meaning a material object, caused by absorption in the gross and subtle bodies, the pure Atma, Tvam, manifests itself. This is taking pratyaksha avagamam dharmyam, chapter 9, Bhagavad Gita, susukam kartam avyayam. It's drilling down. How are we to directly perceive the soul when you can't see it? It's too tiny. Even if you had super magnification, you can't see it. It's too tiny. What to speak of, it's in another dimension. You can't see it. So how are you going to directly perceive it? So taking that question or that topic from Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, here it is in Bhagavat Sandarbha. To have the realization requires a mind that's actually pure. And when the mind is actually pure, the otherwise having no material form or qualities, arupitaha, one can perceive it. But one doesn't perceive it in a material way. And as that qualification is there to perceive the Atma, then similarly the qualification to perceive Bhagavan, because that's Bhagavat Sandarbha. So now all of that was just a review point, like how to understand the merciful existence of the Brijvasis, the residents of Vrindavan. They're getting that mercy from the one who is merciful. And that phrase is from the Upanishads. Brahman is great and gives greatness to others. And then those that have received that greatness from Bhagavan, they can give their greatness to the demigods. The residents of Vrindavan are greater than the demigods. That's, the indirect message. They are greater than the demigods. And the demigods that aren't puffed up, like sometimes Indra gets puffed up, but then he realizes, uh-oh. They aspire, when they're not filled with pride, they aspire for the mercy of the residents of Vrindavan. That's what we're hearing in text 32. And now we're going to hear text 34. Here he's saying it directly. My greatest possible good fortune would be to take any birth whatever in the forest of Gokula and have my head bathed by the dust falling from the lotus feet of any of its residents. Their entire life and soul is the Supreme Personality of Mukunda. Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mukunda, the dust of whose lotus feet is still being searched for in the Vedic mantras. So remember from yesterday evening the term mamata. That's this. Their entire life and soul is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mamata. That's mine. I and mine, all in one. Aham and mama. Mamata. That's their qualification, recognizing their qualification. He is hoping to get some dust from their feet. And because their dust from their feet is so special because they're attached to the dust of the feet of Mukunda. The dust of whose lotus feet is still being searched for in the Vedic mantras. And the BBT purport, this verse indicates that Lord Brahma desires to take birth even as a small blade of grass in Vrindavan, so that the holy residents of the Lord's abode may walk upon his head and bless him with the dust of their feet. Being realistic, Lord Brahma does not aspire to directly achieve the dust of Lord Krishna's feet, semicolon. Rather, he aspires for the mercy of the Lord's devotees. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Brahma is willing to take birth even as a stone in a paved footpath in the Lord's abode. And note, take birth. During the discussion with the Chinese devotees, they were, interested in esoteria that was way above their heads. Like, what's the rasa of the stones? They're persons. It's not. They're it. So I'm doing a little research, and I'll share that with you when we come up with it. They're inanimate. Even Vishwanath says they're insentient or unconscious. They're unconscious, yet at the same time they're stimulated to ecstatic love. So they're entities. So the specific question was rasa. I don't mind discussing in this forum. I happen to know the devotees who are asking those questions, and it's way above their heads. So back to the purport. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Brahma is willing to take birth even as a stone in a paved footpath in the Lord's abode. Since Brahma is the creator of the entire universe, we can just imagine the glorious position of the residents of Vrindavan. Paragraph. The Lord's devotees achieve their exalted position by unalloyed devotion and love. One cannot achieve such spiritual opulence by any puffed-up material process of personal improvement. In Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada reveals the mind of Brahma as follows, quote, "But if I am not so fortunate as to take birth within the forest of Vrindavan, I beg to be allowed to take birth outside the immediate area of Vrindavan, so that when the devotees go out, they will walk over me. Even that would be a great fortune for me. I am just aspiring for a birth in which I will be smeared by the dust of the devotees' feet." And we'll end with Vishwanath's direct commentary. The BBT is making some reference to his commentary. He writes, quote, "I have given up my control of the universe and the quest for future liberation. But now, how can I get the dust of the feet of the inhabitants of Braja?" Thinking thus, Brahma speaks with certainty. "Let me have good fortune. May you be pleased to cast your merciful glance upon me. Tad buri bhagyam." What is that good fortune? To be born as a blade of grass in Vrindavan, iha atavyam, to be touched by the feet of your dear cowherd friends of Braja, Oh, Brahma, Krishna says, give up such an unusual obsession and pray for something more suitable to you. Brahma, then let me be born at the edge of Gokula as a stone slab or a piece of cloth to take the dust from the feet of one of your menial sweepers. Krishna, but Brahma, what is the reason for such glorification of the inhabitants of Braja? Do you not have shame as the worshipable creator of the universe to bathe in the dust of the lowly sweeper? Brahma, but they have taken you as their very life. Jivitam, the most beautiful Bhagavan, with smile like a jasmine flower, mukha kunda mukundam. Without you, they perish because they have such unprecedented love for you. You are their all in all, nikhilam, without which eating and drinking have no meaning. Even now, the Shrutis are searching for the dust from their feet without success. I should be more ashamed that the Vedas, with my little prayers, and than the Vedas, with my little prayers. O Lord, let that be. Previously I prayed with Vaidhi Bhakti. Now I pray to be immersed in the ocean of nectar of Raganuga Bhakti, having become the loyal follower of the inhabitants of Braja. Well, Vishwanath is a Rasika Bhakta, and there's no way around it. It comes out in his writing. He is interested in rasa. So he sees that way, he feels that way, he writes that way, he relates that way. So you hang out with Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and you'll become a Rasika Bhakta or a Raganuga Bhakta. And the others, it's not that the others don't, but he is really overt, unabashedly overt, and highly detailed also. Very special acharya. It's something like, from my little perspective, it's something like Vrindavan Das Thakur. In his, he was the first biographer of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life. When he was growing up in Navadvip, he had Lord Chaitanya's association, and then Lord Chaitanya left Navadvip. But he knew his childhood pastimes or youth pastimes very, very well because he was first-hand witness of them. And then later he came to know through others his pastimes in Puri. So his main biography, his Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's a little history. It used to be called Chaitanya Charitamrita, but it got renamed Chaitanya Bhagavat because he was considered the Vyas of Gaura Lila. And Vyas wrote Bhagavat Purana, so his writing became Chaitanya Bhagavat in honor of his exalted position as being like the biographer of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life. And when he writes, he's not really tuned into is the audience going to understand me? He just ecstatic expression after ecstatic expression after ecstatic glorification. He's not trying to hold his reader and help the reader that doesn't accept Lord Chaitanya to accept Lord Chaitanya. He's just glorifying. And Lord Nityananda, similarly, he's Diksha, disciple of Lord Nityananda. And he speaks of Lord Nityananda in that way again and again and again. Later, Krishnadas Kaviraj wrote, because he had not only the diaries or katachas of Murari Gupta, that was Krishna's or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Navadvip, about his childhood pastimes and youth before sannyas pastimes. So he summarizes those with the explicit understanding it's been discussed in detail by Vrindavan Das Thakur, and out of respect, I don't want to re-say it. So you can read Chaitanya Bhagavat for those pastimes for more detail. And then the rest is what he heard from Raghunath Das Goswami, because he lived with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri. So, in his biography of Lord Chaitanya's life, it's a combination. It's highly philosophical, like Prabhupada calls it. It's our postgraduate study, highly philosophical. And I was told by somebody that's Bengali speaking, it's really high Bengali. I don't know the difference between high and not high Bengali, but they do. And it's really high Bengali. Kind of like, Bhakti Siddhanta's English is really high English. I know what that is. So, Krishnadas Kaviraj, writes, this is my appreciation or assessment or something. He writes in this way very similar to Vishwanath. And they were near contemporaries. Not exactly, but close. And so Vishwanath is similarly, Rasika Bhakta, because Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami writes really ecstatic things without, Govindili Lamrita and other. So that side of him is filled with rasa, at the same time really grounded in scripture, so that the readers, purposefully, so that the readers that don't know who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and not necessarily going to accept him, like Vaishnavas accept him, they would accept him. And so there's lots of philosophy. And Vishwanath has, intense standards of philosophy. At the same time, a lot of rasa. So he's sharing Brahma's heart. Before I was in this Vaidhi Bhakti thing, and I was the controller of the universe and seeking liberation and all those things. I'm not going to abandon the Vidhis, but now I want to be a follower of the Brijbasis. I want Raganuga Bhakti all the way. That's Vishwanath and his way of appreciating. So we'll carry on tomorrow. It's already 8 after the hour. And text 34. Jiva Goswami and Sanatan Goswami will share their commentaries on his prayer to become a blade of grass or something, a rock, a cloth. It's just something devotees can step on. And he means it. So let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. This one statement you made, that Brahma is aspiring for mercy of Vrajvasis or the devotees. We also have this teaching, to receive the mercy, we need to take a position of dasa, dasa, and udas. But, for myself, I find my false ego wants me to be at the center.
Want to be at the center?
At the center.
Well, you have lots of company.
So just, how to, at least take some initial steps in wanting to take that position and remember that in our everyday lives and activities.
This is the how-to question. And you buy the bhakti process is the how-to answer. So, 10:14:3, that's the how-to. It's dead on the positive side, and then the negative side. The positive side is dedication to the topics, the glories, etc., of the topics of Krishna, which includes the topics of his devotees. So it's dedication. That's the purification, elevation part, and then there's the letting go. And that was a major part of the topic last night, letting go. So it's the assimilation. Assimilation is just like you can chew your food. If your body is unhealthy, it doesn't assimilate it, and you can become weak even though you're eating. If there's assimilation process, it's kind of a medical idea. Assimilation is reduced. Assimilation of the message is reduced to the degree that we're holding on to the temporary and trying to be the enjoyer of the temporary. So it's part of anything spiritual elevation requires some letting go. But letting go and taking shelter of what? The impetus to let go is shelter. And it's a gradual process of shelter taking, letting go. Striving and mercy. That's the how-to. And be patient with yourself. Can be enthusiastic while you're being patient, but be patient with yourself. However long you've been living in the material world, some portion of that is this lifetime, and it's going to take a while. But you continue with enthusiasm to strive, take shelter, dedicate yourself to the topics. Sanmukaritam Tanuvan Manovir. And that's 360. A life, not just when you're doing your reading and your chanting, but your life dedicated to those messages, in full. So it's gradual.
I have one practical question. I'm finding that, your classes, there is recorded version, there is live version, and I'm not able to keep up with the pace. So I was wondering, what is better to hear, like continuation, the recorded lecture, or should I, hear the live lectures? I find, what should be the proper way of hearing these messages, because they're all, connected.
Yeah, they are. Well, what may work for you may not work for somebody else, and what may work for you and somebody else may not work for a third person. So it has to be a little bit customized. Yamuna Jivana commented when I was just recently in Chicago that attending classes in person is not the same as hearing the recording, or hearing the recording is not the same as attending classes in person. So it would, if that's what seems to be for you also, try to attend the classes, even if it's live but not recorded. If that's the capacity of time that you have, then try to do that. And then if there's more time, you on weekends or whatever it is, then you do some of the other. And I'm going to keep going. Okay?
Krishna Guru Maharaj. So the first question I have is, the first you told God has unlimited qualities. Krishna has unlimited qualities.
Yes.
So, as a soul, we are qualitatively same with Krishna. So the question is, when I see a devotee or any other person in the devotional service, can I see those qualities in them? Is there a way?
Well, there's a science to qualities. And qualities manifest according to Krishna's decorating a soul with qualities. So it's in Krishna's hand. We're dependent. Right? We're dependent. So Krishna will decorate us with qualities, whatever he wants. So you'll see some, and you won't see necessarily all. And then sometimes, as the devotee becomes more spiritually connected to Krishna, in Krishna consciousness, you'll see more of certain qualities. So it's in gradations of light and the absence of light and darkness. There's in gradations. And then there's another consideration is there's variegatedness not only according to the modes of nature, but variegatedness according to one jiva and another jiva. For example, now this isn't from a Lord Chaitanya teaching or Gaudiya perspective, the gopis are all expansions of Radha. Correct? She's the Lord's internal pleasure potency in full, and the gopis are expansions of her. So she has all qualities, and some have these particular qualities, some have those particular qualities, and then it's like a bouquet of flowers that have different colors and different fragrances, but their qualities are just her qualities, and they don't have all of her qualities. But you put the whole orchestration together, and it makes it very nice, like a bouquet that doesn't just have one kind of flower with one color and one fragrance. A vase or bouquet has diversity. So same. It's specific to your question. In devotees, you'll see whatever qualities they naturally have, to whatever degree their Krishna consciousness has progressed, and to whatever degree Krishna bestows qualities upon them.
My second question is steadiness of mind. So, I cannot say I'm 100% steady right now, but I'm sure I'm steady, like when I'm listening to your lecture.
You're on the way home.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, you might got it, my question, but so how can I keep that steady mind wherever I go? I cannot take you with me to the grocery store or while working, or maybe there is a possibility of having your lecture recorded and listening to your lecture.
Devotees do that.
Yes. But that is also not always practically possible.
Okay. Then, by attachment, the mind will go to what you're attached to. That's the lesson. The hearing, or back to her question, the how-to question that she asked. By practice, it becomes natural. The mind will go to that which one is attached to. And then there's this sadhana, there's a practicing stage, and then there's a spontaneous stage. So you may practice, and that by purification, then it becomes attachment and spontaneous. So you're in the practice stage. You practice. And it carries as much as that practice is resulted in attachment for the object of devotion. And otherwise it's going to be unsteady. Unsteady bhakti, steady bhakti. Then there's further stages. But to get to steady bhakti, it's practice and attachment to the object of service. I started sharing, this is just a little, a personal response to your question. I started sharing that Govardhanastakam because when I first heard it, it was someone else speaking it. But the melody was so enchanting. I was attracted. So then we put it together. And after, a couple of devotees worked on it, put it together for the Govardhan Parikrama. And just by playing it several times, I found, I wasn't trying, but I would wake up in the morning and the melody was playing in my mind. I hadn't learned the words yet. And then during different times of the day, and it wasn't like I wasn't trying for that to happen, but it was very attractive. And so Krishna gave that remembrance. That's from 15:15 Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I'm situated in the heart of every living entity, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge and forgetfulness. All three. So that's a procedure. By cultivation, it comes natural.
So, in other words, can I say, when I go outside or when I have to keep my mind steady, can I do chanting internally, saying, Hare Krishna or something else? So that will keep my mind steady.
Whatever is shelter for you, go for it. And with the mood, not just the mechanical, but in addition to doing with your heart into it. And that's bhakti. We're distracted because, Krishna's not at the center for us yet. It's I like Krishna and I'm at the center. And then we're distracted. Then the mind isn't steady. Okay. We're going to go online.
This question is from Rupa Vilas Prabhu. Since the jivas are eternally individuals with no birth at any time, can we conclude that absolute truth consists of Supreme Personality and subordinate personalities, the jivas?
Oh, yes. And not only jivas, everything. The absolute truth is everything. But the absolute, if you take the absolute truth in the sense of the source of everything, then the answer would be no, the jivas aren't the source of everything. But the absolute truth includes everything, including the jivas, and everything.
And the second question is Godhead equal to absolute truth? And the Supreme Personality of Godhead equal to Supreme Personality of Absolute Truth? Kindly clarify these terminologies.
Oh, it's Prabhupada's language. Godhead is his language. And it's to help understand, it's for different purposes. The two main purposes of the language, Godhead, is he uses often the Latin summum bonum. Now, who knows what summum bonum means, because we don't study Latin. But it means that which is the source. Or he sometimes uses the word fountainhead. Now, fountainhead doesn't say a person. It indicates the source, thus summum bonum, or Godhead. But the second purpose of Godhead is person, not just God, because there are all kinds of ideas out there about God not being person. So Godhead, you can't get away with, imperson. He's person. So fountainhead, who is a person. That's the language. So if you understand that one, then the others are kind of not so critical. The absolute truth, the supreme person, Godhead, supreme personality, Godhead. They can be used, in full, supreme personality, Godhead, the absolute truth, or some piece of them. But if you understand the intention of the user of those terms, then it can be any one of them or any part of it or anything like that.
This question is from Sri Radhika Mataji. It seems to me that Krishna consciousness is experienced by being present with Krishna in the current moment.
In the current?
In the present moment.
In the present moment. Okay.
If we are fluctuating between past happenings or future fantasies, we lose the opportunity for Krishna consciousness right now. And then forever, Krishna consciousness is a mirage that doesn't come into my heart's grip. Yet, this doesn't seem to apply to the Raganuga Bhaktas of Vrindavan. Even while they are with Krishna, the anticipation of separation impels them into deeper experience of Krishna in the present moment. Will you please correct my understanding or offer your commentary?
Yeah, it's not, your understanding is fine. To be in the moment, that's a popular phrase. From a Vaishnava perspective, it's not that you have blinders on and you don't have peripheral vision. You can't, as you're being in the moment, you're restricted from learning from past mistakes. You can't do that. That's a no-no. You just lost your being in the moment status by an awakening of some understanding of a past mistake. It's a comment specific to the Brijvasis. They also reflect on, what happened when the twin Arjuna trees fell down, and they're absorbed in Krishna, and they think of the past and they prepare for the future. Let's move from Gokul because it's dangerous here. Let's go to another place. And they're in the moment. They're considering the future. So the main, that it's one should be cautious about that being present idea. Being present doesn't mean you're a stone, and it doesn't mean you're not within the world that has past, present, and future. Like the residents of Vrindavan.
This question is from Uttama Bhakta Prabhu. Related to a few days ago, if senses of residents of Vrindavan are directly controlled by the Lord and not by the demigods, I need a little help with the fact that there are original demigods in the spiritual world whose prototypes are here in the material world. Since residents of the spiritual world have spiritual bodies, why would they need demigods there? And the fact mentioned earlier that Vrindavan residents are not controlled by the demigods.
I think we'll ask Govinda Mohini to answer that question. What? No, I'll answer the question. It has to do with being dependent. That's the answer. I'm speaking to her because she was struggling with that concept a while ago. But she's now, it's pretty clear. Not crystal clear, but pretty clear. So in the spiritual world, are living entities independent or dependent? The answer, they're dependent. We're eternally dependent. So why would they need those to whom they're dependent upon? Because they're dependent. And Krishna's giving opportunities even to his expansions to do some service for him, because he's the source of everything, including those you use the term demigods, but they're not exactly demigods. They're controlling personalities that are assisting the pure devotees to do what they do for Krishna. It's like a concert. And they're having a little, good time having a concert. It's all part of the rasa of Krishna and his various expansions of living entities and shaktis and vibhu expansions to be in loving service to Krishna. And they're all dependent. And there's one who's independent. Next. That's it.
Radha Kunja Bihari Prabhu's question. In Ramayana, when Sugriva sends search parties looking for Mother Sita in the 4 directions, he describes Yamapuri in the city of Yamaraj at the end of the south direction. The document circulated regarding Yamaraj abodes is not listing Yamapuri. Is there a reason for not listing it?
I probably just missed it, but thank you for that. Why don't you send me the English of that section, and I'll see if I can get some clarification. It may be Yamapuri in the south direction may be included in one of those Bhumandala residences of Yamaraj. The Bhumandala residences Yamaraj include the abode of the Digpals. Those are overseeing the different directions, and it's also and Palakshandweep, the 4 places where those are similarly upholding the directions. So it may be there, but send me the not the Sanskrit, please, but send me the section that you're speaking about. I'll take a look at it and see if I can get some help from Antardweep.
This question is from Rasakrida Prabhu. What is the spiritual importance of Kurukshetra besides Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita? Is there a significance of selecting that place?
I'm sure there is. The little bit that I know is it's a holy place. Just like, for example, when Parshuram and Bhishma Dev have their disagreement about Parshuram's order for Bhishma Dev to marry, he says, I've taken a vow, I can't. So we'll fight. Let's go to Kurukshetra because it's a holy place. And so there's you can check in Mahabharata for some detail, but what he says about that place is those who die in that place attain to the spiritual realm or something like that. That's a sacred place. So Kurukshetra took place, the battle of Kurukshetra took place there because it's a sacred place. It's a known sacred place that has its mahimas, its glories.
Amara Mataji has 2 questions. The first question is, does purity of mind come from constant remembrance of Krishna and his service?
Why are you asking that question?
She has a second question that's connected.
Let's hear the second question, because it's I'm curious why she's asking the question.
The part 2 is, in the past classes we have heard about from knowledge comes realization, and today we heard realization comes from purity of mind. Can you kindly comment of their
Well,
connections?
why separate purity of mind from knowledge? It's a symptom of knowledge, is to have purity of mind. It's not, if it's A, that it can't be B. But supposing A and B are in the same continuum. Real knowledge includes a pure mind. A pure mind includes real knowledge. It's like saying knowledge arises from bhakti. Janiyati ashu vairagyam jnanam cha yadhaitakam. So bhakti is from a position where the mind is pure and knowledge arises. So they're resting upon bhakti. So you could say, well, wait a minute. This is one of those kinds of questions where you don't have the big picture and you hear something over here and you hear something over there. It looks like there's a conflict. There's no conflict. You step back and look at the big picture, and it all arises from bhakti. So then you can say, well, that's not this reference that devotees picked up on, and thank you for listening carefully. See the big picture. Don't just get stuck. It's all got to fit into that bucket. And if there's something other than that bucket, I'm stuck. I see a contradiction. It doesn't have to be like that. Where does everything come from? Step back. The purpose of all of this is to realize Krishna. And how to realize Krishna? Through bhakti. So, pure mind, knowledge, bhakti bring realization. And they're connected. I'd like to end, if we can end. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.